Welcome to the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. I'm thrilled you're here. My name is Jason Elkins, and in addition to being your host, I'm also a former U.S. Army paratrooper, third-generation commercial hot air balloon pilot, paramotor pilot, ex-Montana fly fishing guide, advanced open water scuba diver, and a full-time nomad that's visited more than 30 countries on 6 continents. As a seasoned adventure travel expert with a passion for creating and sharing meaningful experiences, I'm on a quest to impact the lives of adventure travelers, tour operators they rely on, and the communities that host them. Every week, I bring you exclusive interviews with fascinating adventure tourism experts who have agreed to share their personal stories, favorite destinations, and some invaluable travel insights they've picked up along the way. We'll enjoy a casual conversation, create some connections, and likely share some laughs. It's my hope that by the end of each episode, this big world will feel just a bit smaller. Let's get started, shall we?
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. Today, we've got Vanessa here, Vanessa Gordon. She's the CEO, and she's a publisher for East End Taste. Vanessa, welcome to the show. Happy to have you here.
Thank you, Jason. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Well, we're going to have a great conversation. Any of our listeners know that we don't generally talk too much about what you do until kind of near the end of the conversation. We kind of normally start at the beginning, but I want to just give our listeners kind of the 30-second elevator pitch of what is East End Taste, and then we'll come back and discuss a little bit more later in the conversation.
Sure, yes. East End Taste is a publication that I founded in July of 2016. So East End Taste encompasses a digital media, marketing, and event production company. Let's see. So we cover mainly the region, the eastern end of Long Island, which encompasses the North and South Forks. We cover that during our high season. So we cover like different events, restaurant openings, food news, food trends in the region and such, chef profiles and the like. And then in the off season, if you will, or say around October to April, we do a lot of internationally focused coverage and destinations throughout the world that are perhaps like or similar to the Hamptons in the sense that maybe they're seasonal coastal destinations or destinations that perhaps someone who lives on the eastern end of Long Island may be drawn to or want to visit.
Okay, got it. And I appreciate that because that gives our listeners kind of an understanding, this is not all about the Hamptons. There's an international culinary type of part involved as well. So I wanted to give the listeners kind of a little bit of a taste of that.
Yes.
But more importantly, I want to hear your story. I want to kind of understand, how did you get from wherever you were to where you are now to what you're doing now? And I don't know how far we need to go back. Sometimes we go back all the way to early childhood. It's completely up to you. How far back do we need to go for our listeners to kind of get a feel for you and how you got where you?
Sure. I would say let's go back to when I was in graduate school. I was teaching English as a second language abroad. I was teaching in London and Oxford. And then I came back to the United States. I was teaching ESL in Connecticut and in New York City. And so I got my degree at NYU for teaching. It was, and it is wonderful. So when I say that is, would I ever go back to teaching? Yes, I would. It just perhaps wasn't the right time. I was also starting a family at the time. So soon after my daughter was born, the school that I was teaching ESL at out here in the Hamptons closed. It was a charter school. And then I was just what's called pushing into different schools in the area to help or support with ESL and for tutoring. But I was continuing to expand my family. My son was born a few years later, but I really wanted my own entity, so to say. I wanted my own business or to be, at the helm of something that I loved. And so I did.
Hey, real quick, just because I want to ask now while I remember. When you said I was teaching ESL, teaching English to London, honestly, that threw me off a little bit.
Yeah.
I was expecting, I went to Germany, I went to Japan, I went to China.
Right.
So I think this is kind of interesting. Tell me a little bit more about teaching English in London, teaching English in the US. Just tell me a little bit about the students and what was that all about?
Definitely. So in London and Oxford, so it was a mix. So I was still in graduate school, so it was more of an experience-driven, teaching opportunities. So I was in Camden, in the north of London, and in Oxford. With that, I remember the name of one of the schools. It was called Primrose, and the population. London has an incredibly diverse international population. And so I was teaching mainly students from, at the time, this is going back to 2011, 2012, I was teaching mainly students from Bangladesh, India, Romania, and Russia at the time. So it was an interesting mix. So it was
I'm imagining you running into your British counterparts, maybe other teachers,
mhm.
but British people, and you would tell them, "I'm here teaching English," and I'm imagining the response that you would get from, because a lot of people I know in England think that we as Americans don't really speak English. Did you get any grief around that? Did that ever come up?
That actually did it. But what I really appreciated teaching over there was their style was so perhaps compare, at least this is what I experienced compared to the United States. It was more of a laid back, down to earth approach. So for instance, I went to a place to learn to take some courses called the Writing Institute. And I always I wonder if I assume they still exist. It was a phenomenal, intimate group of educators and scholars, and they were absolutely phenomenal with how they would take a book like Where the Wild Things Are and make it into this incredible creative learning process. And we literally spent 2 hours dissecting that book, analyzing that book, and creating a full, almost unit teaching plan just on that book alone for teaching English, but through a creative approach. And that actually was what my master's thesis focused on, was
Okay.
teaching ESL through a creative fictional approach, and to teach them how to utilize their creativity to help to go deeper in learning the language.
Okay. And I'm also curious about, I can imagine that perhaps your students, with a wide variety of students from places all around the world,
Mm.
what kind of impact that might have had on you? Do you think that has any impact on your desire to travel and to get more involved with these international?
That was exactly it. So that was my first time spending any significant amount of time abroad. When I was in undergrad, I did not study abroad because I was on the fast track. Well, that was one of the reasons. I graduated a semester early. I could have graduated a year early if I really, really pushed it and took some summer classes. But honestly just wanted to save money. I didn't want to rack up more student loans and stuff, and through room and board. So my last semester, I think I needed like 9 credits, literally there one day every other week. And so I didn't have the many opportunities to travel. I think I didn't leave the country until I was 19, and that was to Antigua in the Caribbean. And then since then, I've visited, in the short amount of time that I've been traveling actively, which is about about 5 years now, almost 6 years. I've visited 35 countries.
Wow.
Yeah, but that I'll tell you, me being in London and being not only there, but immersed in all of these different cultures and meeting people from every corner of the world really drove my interest and catapulted to travel.
Do you remember maybe the first student, or I'm imagining a student that you met that you connected with and
Yeah.
thought, I want to go there? Like, do you remember the first place that kind of came onto your radar as a result of this teaching job that you're like, ooh, I want to go there someday?
Yes, it was when I was meeting students or people they were in their late, how old would they be? They're about maybe 5 years younger. They used to be in their early 30s now, but they were at the time maybe 17, 18 years old. They were from the Philippines. And the way they sold the Philippines to me was quite something, because I ended up going to the Philippines, and that was my first long haul. I mean, it took a day or so to get there. And that was quite an experience in and of itself. And I loved it. I have not been back since. It's been many, many years, but I would love to go back and visit Boracay, Cebu, Palawan, etc. All of the cool places, because I was just in Manila. I was in the capital there, and I went to Quezon City as well. So that was quite an experience. But that's what's really cool, is when you put yourself in a whole new, you're in a whole new place. It's incredible, the people that you meet and the people that you foster these solid relationships with. And it was so interesting, is all throughout my years of traveling, it is the people I have met in other destinations all over the world that I'm still in, that have stronger bonds with.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's fascinating.
I think that a lot of people that listen to this show, I know that a lot of the people that we've had on the show as guests would absolutely resonate with that. This is a conversation that quite often about the connection. I'm imagining you in London, these places, and makes connection like, ooh, the Philippines. I don't really know much about that. And then that sticks with you. You mentioned Bangladesh. You had Bangladeshis and such.
Yeah.
I have not been to Bangladesh, but I met somebody that was from Bangladesh, and it's always been on my list. And
Yes.
it's just kind of, that's what's fun. I mean, I guess you get it a little bit, and maybe you did back
Yeah.
in the States when you were teaching as well, because you had student places there as well. So,
Yes.
but I think if you were teaching English to English speaking kids, English as a first language, you might have missed out on that. So that's pretty cool.
It certainly is. I'll tell you too, as someone now, I'm trying so hard to learn Italian. I'm getting there. I'm getting there, I'll just say. But you truly have to be fully immersed in the language. I don't understand right now. Like my son, for instance, is in a dual language program learning Spanish, but he comes home yesterday and he goes, Mom, I need this translator website to do my homework. I said, no, I'm not allowing that. His teacher allows it. They said, no, it's fine. I'm going, what is the point of this? I don't.
It's an interesting thing. And I think I'll share my perspective on that because I
Yeah.
started communicating with people. I remember I had a girlfriend in college that was Japanese, and I don't know how she passed the test, the English test, to come study in the US, because every conversation we had, she had her little dictionary, for one sentence. It would take a long time. She'd be flipping through her book, and then she'd hand the dictionary to me, and we were communicating like that. And it was painfully slow. I have fond memories of it, but it was slow. And now that we have access to Google Translate, and I'm living in Latin America, and I've been learning the language, I can communicate with people on the street. But I'll tell you, I've actually used Translate as a tool to learn, believe it or not, because oftentimes you're like, I'm pretty sure I'm not saying this right. And if I had to go find a teacher, or if I had to go find a textbook, or if I had to go sit through a class to figure out how I'm saying this particular sentence wrong, I'm just going to keep saying it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But I can pick up my phone and I can do a quick translate, and I'm like, okay, I get it. So then I can, convert that and use that. So I actually have found translation tools, as long as you don't rely on them, as long as it's not just, I'm going to copy and paste for my homework. But I don't know. So anybody that's listening, just my take on it as a translator, tools are great. But I also encourage people, if going to go somewhere, try and learn some language, try and communicate without the phone, because who wants to be that person? I pretty much live in Latin America. I don't want to be that guy sitting at the table in the restaurant, handing my phone back and forth between my dates so we can communicate. But anyway, is Italian, is this your first attempt to learn a foreign language?
No, so I took French in high school, or no, excuse me, in middle school and high school. Like a fool, I'll be honest. I quit French because I did not have, I'll tell you, I did not have a lot of, I'll just say, educators around me, or people really, I should not have quit French. I should have just kept going.
Yeah.
But I went and switched to Spanish, did very well in Spanish, got all the way up to level
all without the translators. That's great. But probably because you actually teach and you took classes.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking as someone who's never sat a class to learn. So yeah, that's the difference.
And then I switched in college to Latin. So I gave up on French, gave up on Spanish. I wrote Spanish so well, switched to Latin, picked up Latin pretty well, but lost it just as quickly.
Why? I have to ask.
Why?
I've always wondered why people take Latin. I mean, I understand it's connected to a lot of different languages, but tell me why.
Why? So the reason was because as I knew that I wanted to either not necessarily teach, but I wanted to go deeper with English. I was concentrating on British literature, Old English, studied as well. And it was more to learn and to understand how languages were formed.
Okay.
And to have some sort of root to it, so to say. And, people that, speak Spanish, they could understand Latin very well, even Italian, same thing.
Okay.
So they're all the Romance languages. So there, I actually minored in classics in college.
Okay.
Then I did take an Italian course in college, and I picked it up very, very, very quickly. Did super well with that. But then I didn't start trying to learn Italian until about 2 years. Oh gosh, it's almost 3 years. But it's that joke is, and I use Duolingo, but there's a few other apps that I really need to delve into and get started with. But there's that joke about the app Duolingo, like, oh, you've been learning on Duolingo for 5 years. They go into the French restaurant, s'il vous plaît, done.
Yeah.
Like, they just freeze, and that I can totally relate.
I think, yeah, you're right. My mom was doing, when she starts something, she's very tenacious, and she was in Duolingo, and I think she was on like a 400 or 500 day streak.
Yeah, I lost my streak. Yeah, I think I was like 300 and some odd, or more.
And she's never been anywhere they speak Spanish. She lives in Arizona, so there is some Spanish around. But she's got a landscaper that comes over. She cannot communicate with him at all about what
Yeah,
she wants.
I can
She's
relate.
pointing at things, and she just cannot communicate at all. And if she's listening to this, she'll appreciate it. She knows it. And yeah, so I think being surrounded, it's the only reason I learned any Spanish. I had traveled quite a bit. I'd been to
Yeah.
Spanish speaking countries, Latin America, Central America, all around. But
Right.
when I started traveling full time and pretty much, am living here in South America now, it's
Nice.
like, okay, I need to learn Spanish. There's a lot of motivation. I'm pretty outgoing. And if I didn't learn Spanish, I would be very, it's just, so you got to put yourself in a place where you don't need to use it. So when are you going to go to Italy and immerse yourself?
Hopefully, so I am going there in April of this year. I am headed to Switzerland in a couple weeks. It's so funny is my girlfriend who is in hospitality, she booked the flights and she just texts me. She says, "Oh, I booked a one way," and I go, "Girl,
Awesome.
is that?" I said, "You killed me. You
Well,
killed me."
you mentioned kids and family earlier. I don't know if this would be a good time to talk about that.
What's funny is we both have. I'm gonna send it to Alyssa. She's gonna laugh so hard, but she has two children. We're in like the same predicament. She has two kids. I have two kids. She's separated from her partner. I'm in the middle of a divorce, so we're
Oh,
having
geez.
this like moment to like together, and I don't know if it's good or bad, but we feed off each other. Like she texts me, she goes, "Vanessa, let's go to New York City and party until like 4 a.m." And I'm like I was so good my whole life. Don't do that. I'm having
All
a
right.
moment.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Let's change the conversation before we get to the point you do not want to share this episode with
That's
anybody.
right. That's right.
That being said, I divorced about 3 years before I bought my first one-way ticket. So it took a while to get the nerve up to go do it. So
Yeah.
maybe you're ahead of me. But you probably want to how old are your kids?
No, my daughter actually celebrated her birthday yesterday. She just turned 11 and my son is 7. No, I do have to
Well, they'd
be.
love Italy.
I'm going to be, well, I'm working on bringing them there with me. That's a whole other story for another day. No, I have to be back. I think I leave the 29th, but I have to be back by February 5th because we have New York Fashion Week here and I'm involved with some projects there. So
it's hard to just pick up and move and travel.
Right.
That one-way ticket thing sounds really romantic. It sounds really exciting. And then the realities of life kick in. I mean, I'm still happy with my choice. I've been doing it for almost 3.5 years. I'm still happy with my choice, but there are downsides. I have no place that I call home. I'm sitting in an Airbnb as we're recording this. Everything I own is in my suitcase right over there. And I have anything back home family. But when I go back to the States, I stay at my mom's house. I'm a 51-year-old man staying at my mom's house. I do not want to identify that as my home.
Yeah.
As probably anybody could imagine. So anyway, if you get ready to go do that at some point, let me know. I can give you some tips.
Oh, I appreciate that.
So we got a little bit sidetracked on the conversation around the teaching. You mentioned you kind of got out of that because you wanted your own thing. You were starting a family. So I want to make sure we don't miss anything. So let's go back and kind of figure out kind of where to next. You started the family, you wanted your own thing. What did that look like?
Definitely. So while I was teaching, I was also freelance writing for a number of the local publications out here and in the city. So ones perhaps people may recognize, Thrillist, Psychology Today, TripAdvisor, many, I think some may still exist, some don't exist anymore as the way of media now. So I was, being very, very proactive with bringing in a solid income because all of my income was pretty much just going to paying off my student loans because my husband at the time was, he was a resident physician. So we were literally living not on much, but we were getting by. And then in addition to that, I was also teaching fitness classes. So it was more of, I loved going to the gym. I was always very motivated in the sense that like, well, if I love doing it so much, why not make some money from it? And so with that being said, I said, I really feel like I have something here. I have a lot of knowledge in the region. I'm in touch with so many different, restaurant, just through all the coverage that I've already done, going to many of these, high profile events out here, functions, just learning the map, so to say, of what to cover and what to do. So with that being said, is I started for like as a passion project, if you will, East End Taste in July of 2016. But then at the time, I was also teaching fitness classes at the local one of the local resorts out here. And I sat down with the marketing director, and he's like, what have you been, what's been going on in your life? Just having a casual
Mhm.
conversation. So I started this website called East End Taste. He goes, let me take a look at it. And he was looking at it and he goes, you've got something here. And this is a guy who's been doing marketing. He was living in DC, working at all these different resorts and hotels and such. So he had a really solid, background. And he says, "You've got something here." He says, you could be bringing in a solid income with this. This is very, very strong content." He says, "You should do something with this." I said, well, "You can make money." This is literally what I said to him. "You can make money. How?" And he explained it all to me in the fastest way, in like 15 minutes. I just said, "Go do this, do this, do this. You've got something here. You could be hiring people to write. You don't need to be, all of the." He was just feeding me all this information. And it was a lot to process at first, but I was motivated. I figured it out. And I said, let's do it. So that's how East End Taste went from me just, type of writing all these different articles. And I was working extremely hard, realizing that, well, I don't necessarily, I needed to work. It's important to work hard, but I need to work more smarter, not harder, so to say. And with that being said, I connected with a very good friend of mine, still in touch to this day. Actually, he's a digital nomad himself, and he was saying, "No, I've got someone for you to help you with web developing." He helped build my website, so that's how. And that guy was based in Pakistan, so that's how that all transpired. And then boom, I got the website, running full speed. But then, interestingly enough, I became pregnant with my son about 6 months later. So things took a pause for pretty much the whole 2017, because I had something called hypermesis, which is just severe morning sickness throughout the pregnancy. Completely, when I say knocks you out, you can't function. It's horrible. But anyway, with that being said, brought it all back, and that's when I brought or created my annual summer event series, the Hamptons Interactive Brunch, which is me thinking, how am I going to market East End Taste? How am I going to market myself as a media, a budding media company? What do I do?
Mhm.
So I figured throw a solid event. Now, events are not necessarily money making platforms. However, what it will do is, so say you have, with budgets, the first thing usually cut is the marketing budget. However, if you're able to work it in a smart way where all the expenses are covered, you have sponsors, you create something very, very solid. And of course, in a prime location, that is the Hamptons. I attend all these events. I know exactly how they're run. I know exactly how they're put on, where to get sponsored, how it all works, which is no easy task, I'll say. So as I was building East End Taste, I also built up the event component of it. And that's how the name got out there.
It
And
makes
yeah,
sense because I can imagine a magazine or a media company
yeah,
just sponsoring an event like that to get their name out there. And they've got all these people coming there. If it's a good event, it's associated with the magazine. And you basically just kind of sponsored your own event in a sense
exactly.
by putting in the time and effort to make it happen, getting
Exactly.
some other sponsors and other revenue to help cover those expenses. It sounds like,
That's exactly what it was, because we could pay, not say, pay, but you have to, there's some sort of a solid investment. Why do that into
mhm,
another when you could do it for your own and you have full control over everything?
mhm,
And the one that I just put on this past June, the larger event, I put on a couple of events last year, but the larger one, that was such a success in the sense that I still look at to this day like, I cannot believe I did that. And you have these moments where you're putting these, like, that was a 400 person event. You're putting something ongoing the week before, like, I don't even know how I'm physically doing this. How am I functioning? I'm, every single thing is going through your mind, and you just do it. And
yeah.
that's the sense how I built East End. I had no idea what I was doing, but I had the right people around me, and I wasn't
Mhm.
afraid to ask questions. I
Yeah.
wasn't
Well,
afraid to sit
sometimes it's
there. Yeah.
just taking action. Yeah. And action could be asking questions or just deciding I'm going to do this. I don't know how I'm going to. Well, you and I are sitting here participating in my project that I had no idea how I was going to do a year ago.
Yeah.
I'll do a podcast. No friggin' clue.
I love it though. That's how it's all. I love it. We have to, like, we don't know, like people think that we're like I was an expert, like, oh yeah, I know exactly, like but that's why I think what was so empowering in this strange sense was I was not afraid to admit I had no clue what I was doing.
Yeah. And I will share with you that most of the guests, because every conversation I have, we discuss how did you get from where you were to where you are. And the underlying theme there is curiosity.
Yes.
People that work in this type of environment are generally curious. They're risk takers, probably in a lot of places in their life. And that's what I enjoy about people that work in this space is it's my tribe because I'm the same way. I mean, I wish I had some other skill sets that some of them have, but the underlying theme is that ability to just reach out, connect with people. It's why I started the podcast, to connect with people.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't sure what I was going to do as I got back into tourism. And it was like, I'm just going to have conversations with people and I'll figure it out along the way. So we're still doing that. So I'm curious. So now you've got the events that drive a lot of name recognition, a lot of exposure. What does the typical person that goes to your website, what are they consuming? What's the value that your website brings to users? What are they looking at?
Sure. So it's a really nice gateway to perhaps so for speaking specifically for the Hamptons and the North Fork, they know it's a trusted source in the sense that I live here. Like it's not, a publication that just, flew over here from New York City. Mm-hmm. So we have a lot of these, just being really, a lot of these people that call themselves, experts in the region or this, that, and the other. And I'm going, you're covered. Like I sometimes look at these listicles or these, it's funny. And people love people like, Vanessa, you should do these like reaction videos to like when people like talk about the Hamptons. It would be like the funniest thing because it's so how people like, oh, the best places. My favorite are those, I don't have TikTok, but when people send me the link, you could see it on the desktop. Like these are the best hidden spots in the Hamptons for photos. And you're going, it's the same places. Like all, and everyone's like, Vanessa, you have to do a reaction video to all of this and just make fun of this. Because going back to, so people know that I'm a trusted source. I've been here my entire life. My grandmother went to school out here. My dad owned one of the famous nightclubs back in the day out here that still exists. My grandfather was the building inspector of Sag Harbor for many years. So anyway, I'm so rooted here, but I also don't come across as I also admit too that I'm learning to a certain degree, specifically as I travel, so to say. There's also, it's that, place where I'm rooted here, but also have that curiosity to learn about all of these different places. Though I'm able to bring solid content from the East End of Long Island, I'm also like, oh, wow, guys, I discovered this destination, in Ireland, this coastal region that's very, very similar to this. Like I recently discovered, Bowen Island in Vancouver. Like, wow, this is really, really cool. If you love a combination of maybe like the mountains or like that escape that when people go, like Montana, but then you have that really cool like coastal, hidden seclusion, like kind of like Shelter Island here. It's really, really cool how I'm discovering places along with everyone. So people love that continuous curiosity that I have.
So is it mostly, would you describe your website as a blog site? I mean, there's blog articles. Yeah. I don't know if you like the word blog, but it's articles. They're going, we should touch on that because I saw a look on your face when I said, I don't know if you like the word blog.
It's funny.
I did a reaction there.
Well, that was what's interesting is when I was speaking with this gentleman who worked in marketing for different hospitality companies. The one thing he looked at, I'll never forget, he looks up at me from his laptop and he goes, don't call it a blog. Don't call it a blog. Let's get the word blog out of there immediately. Because people, I think it's more, though it is by technically a blog, it's what people, I mean, this is going back almost 10, 15 years ago, what people thought a blog to be.
I'm curious because I've never thought about this, but even immediately in my mind, I'm going to share what comes up for me. It's in my mind. It's a blog. I've been around long enough. Blogging was like kind of a hobby thing, kind of like wouldn't it be cool? I like to write, and wouldn't it be cool if I just want to write about whatever I'm interested in? I don't care if anybody reads it or not, but this is my blog. Is there a connection there?
Yes, exactly. So that's how people would portray. So I mean, for instance, Huffington Post is technically a blog.
Right.
But what sets us apart, we do, have, I have, and also other writers write for Huffington Post. That's technically still a blog. But I think it's, what I'm setting myself apart from is that I do, the event production. There is the, digital marketing side in the sense that I partner with, our local radio station, partner with other entities as well, and do more experiential marketing events and functions and partnerships and such. So there's a lot more to it. I'm not just a digital present, so to say.
You know, what is coming up for me is I'm thinking, oh, maybe I need to
Yeah.
drop the word podcast, because there's we're at a stage in the evolution of media right now that a lot of people have a podcast. And
Yeah.
some people make money with their podcast. Some people haven't quite got there. But I think of like Joe Rogan. We kind of sometimes say it's the Joe Rogan podcast, but it's not. It's the Joe
Yeah.
Rogan experience, right? He's got a specific name for it, or it's the such and such show. So maybe I appreciate this conversation, because I'm thinking about rebranding already. So
It's how people, it's the market again, that market, how people, tune, and can relate, or how they're drawn in. It truly is. It's an incredible, learning more and more and more the power of marketing, what it does.
All right. Well, that's the other reason I do this show. Not this podcast, the show is like I mentioned earlier, I just want to have conversations that I learned from them. So thank you for sharing that with me.
Oh, you're welcome.
So when did you decide, and how did you kind of get to the point where you're like, okay, I've got a big audience of people. I have a pretty good feel for what they're interested in. They feel like they know me, and probably they probably a lot of them have met you at these events. And how did you decide, okay, I really want to do some international stuff? The first conversation I had with you, it sounded like you were kind of in the works of taking some groups and actually traveling with people. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yes. So the travel component started when I went out to California to go to the Expo West convention, which is natural foods, specialty foods and such in Anaheim. And I started getting invited on different, press trips and opportunities through DMCs and tourism boards. And I said, well, this is a great opportunity to expand my readership. So I was really, really pushing very, very hard, network, getting out there, going to a lot of tourism events and DMC events in Manhattan, and getting my name out there. And that year, my gosh, where I went everywhere, California, Australia, Aruba. And then I spent 6 weeks in Ireland and England. I brought my then 5-year-old daughter there with me and my cousin, and we stayed there and literally traveled around both countries and got a full experience there. And then what's interesting is I noticed the reception that I got from now publishing those articles from where I was there and publishing them on the website, and the curiosity soared. The readership that was based here. They're like, oh, wow, Vanessa is now traveling. Vanessa is going to this one. Then that was that curiosity of where I was going next and which destinations. But I had to make sure that those destinations aligned with the quality and where people just be in the Hampton, where they would want to visit. They're not going to be, certainly not camping in the middle of, or doing the van life. Just being on, or there's certain things they're not looking for budget, budget friendly properties and wherever destination. They want very curated, high end experiences. So there was that, I don't say pressure, but I had to make sure that though I was being invited to all of these different places, I couldn't accept them all, because I had to align with my readership. And that's the thing that you have to be very, very careful with. Is the one thing too that right now I'm working with is, though, I mean, for instance, I was in Puerto Rico recently and I went on a Virgin Voyages cruise. I was the guest of my friend Tiana Ibrahimovic, who has an amazing website and platform called Pop Style TV. Though different from me, she's more, celebrity, pop culture driven. I wanted to make sure that, everything aligned. So when we got to Puerto Rico, we were hosted at an Embassy Suites property, though not necessarily, the whole, in line in terms of that high end boutique, 5-star experience. It is still, a great property to know if, it's a, you're looking to just, go, stay there for a night or two, and you're on your way to a cruise, for instance. But anyway, being mindful of that, like I'm invited to a lot of larger chain properties. I have to be, do my homework, do my research, and make sure that they still in some way align. I can't just take, anything.
Let's touch on, because, I trust that a lot of your followers will be listening to this podcast. You may even say, oh, Vanessa's on an adventure travel podcast. What's this all about? Where, you mentioned Virgin Cruises. If the CEO of Virgin came to me and said, I want to do a podcast episode, I'd have to really think long and hard about that.
Yeah.
And figure out, how do I tie that back to the adventure? The reason I thought that there was a good fit that we should have a conversation is because I think that there's a lot of different ways to define the word adventure travel. For me, interestingly, I'd say it's easier to say what it's not. For me, it's probably not cruise ships, large cruise ships, maybe
Right.
small expedition boats. It's not large cruise ships. It's not chain hotels. It's not all-inclusive beach resorts. And I recognize that some of your followers may be interested in an upscale cruise or an upscale beach resort, and that's fine. But I also think the food element is something that is a common thread throughout most of the conversations I have and most of the people that adventure travelers, to be honest with you, think that food is such an important part of it, which is what drew me to having this with you. So I don't understand the demographic of your audience. I've never spent any time in the Hamptons. I know virtually nothing about it, but I suspect that when you mention hidden places, unique discoveries, you use the word discovered, you discovered this, not like you discovered it like you're the first person there, but you discovered it and you found a connection. And I suspect a lot of that has to do with food, interesting places, maybe cultural exchanges that I personally find adventurous. So like I can imagine an excursion into Italy and learning how to make Parmesan cheese with maggots in it and think, oh, that's pretty cool. That's pretty adventurous. Maybe your audience doesn't want to do that. I don't know. So let's touch on the part, your definition of adventure travel and why you were intrigued by joining me on that.
Definitely. Yeah. So let's see. With that being said, what I love to, and what I think people just, when I say people are, people that I meet at different, properties and just along the way, they always appreciate that I'm so open to new experiences and to, they always, like, for instance, I did a cooking class recently in Tuscany at this property called Rosewood Castiglione del Bosco, which is actually rated the best hotel in the world 2022. But with that being said, as I go there and we start cooking, I had no idea what we were going to make. And it was funny. He goes, do you want to know what we're making? And I said, though the curiosity exists, I want to be surprised.
Yeah.
I wanted to be surprised. We were, here, we had just gone truffle hunting. Not only was it was my first experience truffle hunting, I had that I had no idea what that experience was, that the, dog could be picking up something that perhaps looks like one, or you could tell if it, how, good, good it is, or except then there's the differences between white truffle and black truffle and the time of year and where to look and how they actually find the truffles is by the scent. Absolutely fascinating. It actually didn't take long to find them. I thought this was going to be like a few hour expedition, search deep into the woods. No, it was not. It wasn't too bad at all. But
are you sure they didn't go out and plant them? Oh, we've got a group going out. We've got this travel writer coming. We need to make sure she finds a lot of truffles.
That did just dawn upon me.
Can you tell that I was a guide in the past? I was a fishing guide, and people often would joke, I think you knew these fish were here. Yeah, I did. But anyway.
It was just so funny because we literally just walked maybe 30, 40 feet away from the road. Holy moly. I hope.
I don't want to dash your story, but no, I know nothing. I just say that joking. Yeah. But I'll tell you, one of the best trips I ever had was in Namibia. We were with this group. We were doing a familiarization trip with a group of people in the industry. And the tour operator is like, okay, we're going to this new camp. We're thinking about doing some work here. We've never really worked here. So they set up this camp and they take us there. And then like the first night at dinner, the guide comes to us and says, okay, a couple people, on our team were out scouting today and they found something really curious. We don't know exactly what it is, but so what we're going to do is we're going to take you guys out there tomorrow. We're going to go out to this place and see if we figure out what it is. And so, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. So they load us up the next morning, they take us out, and then we walk and we walk and we walk. Probably didn't actually go that far, but they took us on a route that made it feel like it was really far. And then we get to this place and there's these mounds of rocks. And it's like, oh, we think it's a burial site and this and that. And they're like explaining what they think. And it's like, we've never seen this before. And it's like, we were all so excited. And these are a bunch of travel professionals, right? And then like at the end of the trip, I was like, oh my gosh, that would be an amazing itinerary. They could do that same itinerary every week for their guests. And every week the guests are going to feel like they discovered burial mounds that have never been seen before. And it was just so amazing. So anytime I hear of a cool experience, I wonder, anyway, I don't know, it has nothing to do with truffles. But it's about that excitement of just kind of seeing something new and exploring something new. I would love to go truffle hunting. It was
fun.
And that's something I could see absolutely would resonate with your audience, right? Or with your
Oh,
followers.
most definitely. It was so funny is, oh, that's, I remember now, is as we were getting ready, I remember my girlfriend who I was with at the time, she says, aren't you gonna change your shoe? You're wearing white sneakers. And I said, I thought we were like walking along like a path. Like I had no idea what this involved at all. And then I go to change and I put on like my hiking gear and I go to get my backpack and then go from one extreme to another.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had these trekking, cover on your shoes that actually help, like if you have to climb rocks and I had I got my
Climbing
hiking
Everest.
gloves pretty much, and I
I think
get
they're called crampons.
yeah,
Climbing on the ice.
yeah, pretty. I
You were
get
ready.
that, and I had no idea because it was cold.
Yeah.
They had a frost supposedly the night before, and then I have my gloves. I was like, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I thought we are going deep into the what?" And I said, "What are we doing?" And then she has me put on like rain boots. I'm going, "Oh, okay." I had no idea, so it was really funny. So I said, "I'm just gonna follow your lead and wear whatever you tell me."
Do these tour operators or guides or just people in general tease you when you visit these places as, oh, she's from New York,
I get, my favorite is, my goodness, I wish I had $1 for the amount of times they start belting out New York, New York by Frank Sinatra.
Yeah.
Every
Yeah.
single, they start
Yep.
like serenade. I had few people serenade me a few times.
It's such an, I love New York. I love New Yorkers. I grew up, I spent 5 years in Syracuse when my mom was going to school and then lived in Vermont. So I love the Northeast. And I remember when I was managing a scuba diving and fly fishing resort in Belize. And we got this new guest. He gets on the boat and I asked him, oh, where are you from? And he's like, Third Avenue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Third Avenue.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Third Avenues. And he's like,
Yeah.
no, Manhattan. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, duh.
Yeah. Yeah.
when you're in the city and people ask you, when you're from the city and people ask you where you live, it's the neighborhood, maybe Staten Island or whatever. But
Yeah.
it's just this interesting response. And then I think he realized, oh, I'm in Belize. I'm 2,000 miles away. Why would this guy just assume that, I was in the upper lower Manhattan?
Right.
I don't know. Anyway, so I suspect that, yeah, you're that sometimes.
Yes.
And, another thing that if you haven't already done it, and one of the coolest things I did that definitely would resonate with your audience is, I say your audience, your friends, your followers, your connections, your tribe. Let's use the word tribe. I love that word. I don't know if that's a good word for kind of in the Hamptons. I don't know if they identify that with that word, but I'm going to use it. I visited a place called Ashford Castle in Ireland.
Yeah. Yes. Very
Have
familiar.
You been there? Yeah.
I was supposed to go there. Very familiar. It's still on my list.
Pretty cool. And what I did there that was fascinating was we did what they called I think they called it a hawk walk or something. It was falconry. And they take you out and they introduce you to a falcon. You walk with the falcon on your arm and the falcon out to get little treats and this and that. Mm-hmm. And you feed the falcon. I just thought that was super, super cool. So make sure if you haven't done that somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah,
I haven't done it yet, but I've seen it and I've got to pet the little baby. There's little baby owls I'll have from time to time with the falcon. What I thought was interesting was in 2021, I was at a resort, at a Gran Velas resort in Mexico, just south of Cancun. And I was walking around the property. I noticed this woman walking around with a I guess a falcon.
Probably a falcon of some sort, or maybe a hawk.
And
yeah.
They
call it falconry, but it could be a hawk.
Right. And it would swoop down to the pool and then it would come back. And it was funny. I think I was the only one following this woman around with I didn't have my phone. Actually, no, I did not have my phone that day. And just watching and just fascinated with, the whole process. And I love how people just sit at the pool like, oh, it's no big deal. There's just like a falcon swooping down every now and then. And I'm walking around, I'm going, how fascinating. And I finally found someone that worked there. And I said, what is this going on? And they said, it's a way of keeping the mice away or to,
Yep, that makes sense.
Or to catch them or any rodent or to keep them away. And I said, that's such a great sustainable approach. Because that's what we're, it's one of our fundamentals is sustainability. But I don't call myself at all an expert. I tell people that I'm, again, learning as I go along and discovering. So that's an example of, wow, that's such a great way, instead of spraying perhaps pesticide, is to use the fat to keep them away. And so every resort, I said, did you know that this resort does this? You might want to look into that if you can. Mm-hmm. So again, just spreading, again, we're all about just spreading the word and showcasing just different ways and approaches to use sustainable methods.
Yeah, it's pretty good. There's so many different ways. I think anything that opens up your curiosity and
Yes.
gets you a little bit excited, or something that's just the novelty, I just throw that lump all that in the adventure. If you look at the list of guests I've had on, it's pretty much anything that I'm interested in that triggers my curiosity, because that's my thinking. I'm curious because there is such a food connection, and because your tribe that's listening to this right now might want to know. Have you run across an opportunity to like eat some stuff that maybe some other people would kind of like, ugh, that's
Yep.
disgusting? And I suspect you've had those opportunities. So maybe share a story. What's the most interesting thing that you've had the opportunity to try during?
Sure, yes. So there were two. So the most recent one was in Guanajuato, Mexico, and they were dried crickets, and
Mm,
they just put them on the table, and
like a
I
bag of
ate
like a bowl of chips. Just
like a
reach in
bowl of
and
chips,
eat the.
and there
Okay.
is a video as a reel that I uploaded a little over in October of 23 or thereabouts, in and around the content with with when I went to Austria. Yeah, no, I didn't think about it. I just picked it up and ate it, and there wasn't much to it per se as far as taste. There was more of a texture component, if
Mm-hmm.
anything. Let's put it this way: if there's a bag of of Lay's chips, and that obviously I'm going to go for the Lay's chips.
Says the girl from the Hamptons.
Was the good, I'll just be real. I'm not really exactly what I'm like. Oh my god, looking, for it.
Mm-hmm.
Another one was cuttlefish. That I remember that my
Okay.
roommate in the Philippines was eating like dried cuttlefish, like almost like potato
Mm-hmm.
chips again out of a
Mm-hmm.
bag. And she goes, "Oh, you should try them." And she had gone off to a meeting, and she left the bag on my bed, and I'm sitting there. I don't know what the heck I was watching, but I started eating them, and I went, "Ooh," and I could not.
Really?
No, that's just
Isn't
it. It did
it?
not work.
Isn't it interesting? Because I suspect that you've maybe even served like calamari at some of your events, right?
Yeah.
Like that's
Oh
no,
yes.
calamari is kind of an East End taste type of thing, right?
Yeah.
But the
Exactly.
cuttlefish, no, they kind of look the same
And it was just the way it
before
was
you eat them.
dry.
Well,
I don't know.
the dried thing is interesting.
Strange.
I used to when my son was young, we quite often go to the Asian supermarkets
Yes.
and just buy what, like we'd see like, ooh, what is that? That looks weird or different or interesting. And
Yeah.
we'd buy it and bring it home. And my son is now a very adventurous eater. And so you mentioned the dried cuttlefish. That was one that actually we kind of decided we really liked if it's, got some seasoning on it. But then there was also like little cans of little jars of like dried fish, just like a variety of different dried minnows. And sometimes they'd have little crabs and stuff and little shrimp in
Mm.
there. And I remember we bought this jar of those for him because he was intrigued by them. And he took them to school because sometimes he likes to share things, but sometimes he's not too savvy on what maybe other kids would really want to share. So he took this jar to school and was eating them at lunch, and he got teased pretty hard. So yeah, the next day he's like, "Are you going to take the fish?" And he's like, "Nope, nope, never going to do that again." It's our attitudes, and it gets challenged. Is there anything that
Yeah.
you've eaten that you maybe surprised you that was like, oh my gosh, and it doesn't have to be something that falls into that gross category, but just some food experience that you've had somewhere. It's just like, wow, that was amazing. Expect that. I'm sure you
Oh
maybe
gosh.
probably would have wrote an article about it.
I actually did. I was just north of Guanajuato. This was in a different, no, 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 it was not Guanajuato, excuse me. This is in Merida, Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a dish. We were outside the city, and we go to this famous place with this older woman who's been there for many, many years, and she's famous for her huevos motolenos. And it was so delicious. I went there not once, but I made sure that on the next trip when I was there again, I had them again. They were fantastic, and it's actually a dish that I've since made at home several
Mm-hmm.
times over, and they're absolutely delicious. But the way she makes them, it's and absolutely excellent. The sauce base, semi spicy, and they're so good. It's pretty easy to make at home, but it's just the way she makes them, and I highly recommend if you're outside Merida. Look up huevos motulenos, and I'll send you the link separately if you want to take a look at the article.
I'm definitely. I'm happy you mentioned. So, I guess the question is: anybody that's listening that doesn't have any sort of connections with the Hamptons, has no plans to visit the Hamptons. I really wanted to have this conversation to help them decide. You're talking about a lot of other places as well, a lot of interesting things. So, what would you say to somebody that has no connection with the Hamptons to invite them to your website and sign up? That good stuff.
Oh, definitely. I'm just going to quickly tell you, it was in the huevos motulenos are in the Mercado Municipal in Motul, and it's
Okay.
about 30 minutes away from Merida. And so again, they have even a huevos motulenos fair, and they're celebrating the Yucatan cuisine.
So motelenos, it must
Yes,
be like eggs in like just the sauce is
the
Milano? What is?
sauce, yeah. Yeah, it's made with tortillas, eggs, ham, green peas, and habanero sauce.
Okay. Okay. That sounds good.
Yeah, her name is Doña Evelia, and she began her business in Motul in 2000, and
All
it's
right.
one of the best places to go for that. So definitely, guys, check them out. And she also serves it with a cafe de olla, and it's made with cinnamon. That's like a coffee drink made with cinnamon and dark sugar, and the ingredients are all boiled together. And I'll send you this article.
All right. Very, very cool. Yeah, I'm gonna look at that. So there's a good example of something that somebody would come across on your website that has nothing to
Yes.
do with the Hamptons. So
Exactly. And
right.
it's cool, it's again, but there's such a strong Latin American presence here in the Hamptons too, and that culture as well. And it's really, really, a nice tie-in there too. Because again, locally discovering so much. So I mean, why, again, so why East End taste and why, people a lot of times again they have this. People see that the Hamptons has all of these different they think how high end luxury top tier this, that, and the other thing. But it's truly not. There's such a strong presence in terms of the local population out here. The people have been here for many many years. They draw back all the way to the seafarers back in the 17th century even. So there's a lot more to it. The Hamptons didn't start really building up until about the I would say the 70s or late 70s 80s
Mhm.
perhaps. So there's
Okay.
so much more to just to do there.
All right. So it sounds like, I mean, the question was like somebody that has no desire to go to the Hamptons, would they get value out of the website? Okay, we got that answered. But then I also realized, yeah, maybe we should have that conversation. You basically just invited some people to come check out the Hamptons. So that's great. Can you hear we've got a guy walking down the street outside my room here in Medellin, Colombia, with his little music player, and they
Mhm.
just walk around and serenade people for money. I don't know if anybody can hear that, but I'm just mentioning it in case they can.
Wow,
It's pretty cool. I love it here.
that's awesome.
Anyway, Vanessa, we've discussed a bunch of things. I guess I want to ask you one more question for sure. Have you gotten to the point, like if I was listening to this, I was like, Vanessa sounds pretty cool. I'd like to go somewhere with her. And,
Mhm.
she's getting into taking, groups and maybe she's traveling a lot. Do you have trips currently on your website? What would you say to somebody that's thinking, oh, she sounds like a fun person?
Yeah. So let's see. So in terms of how to connect with me.
Well, we're going to have the link to your website, but yes, I mean, I guess the question is if somebody's thinking, I would like to go take maybe actually go on a trip with Vanessa when, is that like, do you have trips on your website? Are there plans in the works, or is this something that they just need to get on your mailing list through the website? So when you
Yes,
get
definitely
ready to
get.
go do something, they'll make sure to hear about it.
Sure, yes, definitely get on our mailing list because what I'm doing now is I'm working with some other industry professionals and we are going to be creating trips. I think one of our first trips is going to be to Tuscany and Florence. So please, yeah, definitely sign on to the mailing list and we're going to keep you all informed. So that's in the very early planning stages now, but the trip is going to be based on properties that I've personally visited and have grown to love. And honestly, I can't wait to go back.
And I think I'll be speaking with your your partner in this endeavor as well on the show here at some point. I hope so. We'll
Yes.
learn more there as well. All right, very cool. We discussed a bunch of things. Well, actually, one thought that came up. I'm going to mention it now. East End Taste podcast. We're not going to use the word podcast, but the East End Taste something. Like, could you? I feel like you. I don't know if maybe you've already thought about this, maybe something you're doing, but I feel like you probably have a network of people make for interesting conversations to provide similar content, but in a different way. So have you thought about doing a podcast?
Everyone has been telling me to do one, but again, I guess one step at a time for sure. I have some, yeah, but
I'm not trying to push it on anybody. It's a big investment of time. And
yeah,
yeah, so I was just
no,
curious.
yeah, no, for sure. It is something that people have truly asked me over and over again to please to do. So perhaps in the foreseeable future.
So anybody that's listening to this, that's part of Vanessa's tribe, might be time to come back around and ask her to do a podcast if you
Yeah.
enjoyed this show. So we've been chatting for an hour. So if you're still here listening, then maybe that's the proof that Vanessa needs to see. So you hear this message and you reach out to Vanessa and say, hey, I heard you on the podcast. I heard when Jason was talking about you should do a podcast.
Mhm.
Now Vanessa knows that she's got at least one person listened for an hour and reached out to her. So anyway, no pressure, Vanessa, no pressure. That's all joking. Vanessa, we've discussed a bunch of things. I'm curious, what did I forget to ask you? What else should I have asked you? Or what do you want to make sure that our listeners know about you, the Hamptons, East End Taste, or just any general thoughts before we wrap up?
Sure, yeah. So we're going to be starting up doing some smaller events for 2025. So if you're interested there, we'll be doing them in New York City and the Hamptons. And I'm also looking at some international markets too. So that's all in formation. And so I look forward to sharing that all with you. Other than that, definitely jump on our mailing list, eastendtastemagazine.com. And we're found on most major social media, platforms at East End Taste. And then my personal Instagram account is Vanessa P. Gordon. And I'm very responsive to messages and stuff with anyone that has questions.
All right. Very cool. Well, anybody that's listening to this I want to assure you that just look in the show notes. You'll see the link right to Vanessa's business website. You can definitely connect with through there as well. And you weren't able to take any notes while she was mentioning that. So Vanessa, what a treat. Thank you so much. I look forward to connecting with you on future projects. Congratulations on all the continued success with your website and your business. And I learned some things to apply to my business during this conversation as well. So thank you so much. I appreciate you being here.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Yes, thank you.
I trust you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed recording it. If you're enjoying the Big World Made Small podcast, please take a moment to tell the algorithm by subscribing and posting a review so that others can benefit as well. I also invite you to take a quick trip over to bigworldmadesmall.com and join our private adventure travel community to receive new episode notifications, special access to our guest experts, and perhaps even some exclusive partner offers that we haven't discussed on the podcast. I'll publish another episode soon. Until then, keep exploring. It's the best way to make a big world feel just a bit smaller.